So good evening, everybody. I hope you had a meaningful Shabbat of no doubt, which was very challenging for all of us this last Shabbat. And no doubt it's going to get more and more challenging as the weeks go by. And we go into a 3-day Chag in a couple of weeks, which is going to be even more challenging. So the share this evening is Haggadah, the Book of Hope. And what I'd like to share with you over the next few months, the bit of time that we have together, is to be able to see what exactly was the goal of the Haggadah. So just to understand the question and the perspective that which I'm coming from. So the mitzvah to tell the story of leaving Egypt is a mitzvah that comes out of the Torah. We read this a few times of the answers that we give to the various sons in the Haggadah. And the idea is that you would tell your son or your child on that day, on account of this that Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. And that's the Peitzach Matzah Maro. But that mitzvah of Higadat ala bincha is the word Haggadah, which means to tell over, to relay the story. So there's a mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, of telling the story of leaving Egypt. And that is an obligation which is different to the mitzvah of to be zocher, to remember the leaving of Egypt, is an obligation we have every day. So every time we say the Shema, last paragraph is Man, Ani Hashem Elokechem, Asher Hotzeti Echem me'eretz Mitzrayim. So that is the fulfillment of the mitzvah of remembering Egypt every day, which is different from the mitzvah that comes once a year, the Haggadah, to tell the story. Now we actually mention this Haggadah because the Haggadah comes and says a little bit later, you might have thought that this mitzvah to tell the story would have been from the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because that is the time. And it says, no, it's going to be the time when Matzah Maro is in front of you. So the whole story of telling Egypt is specifically on this evening. So that's the mitzvah. But how does one fulfill the mitzvah? So when it comes to saying Shema, so you've got to say the various paragraphs of the Shema. When it comes to mitzvah of lulav, so you've got to pick up the 4 species, and when you've got all 4 in your hand, even if you don't shake them, once you've got all 4 species in your hand, you fulfill the mitzvah of netilat lulav. Once you hear the shofar blasting, you fulfill the mitzvah of tkiyat shofar. So how do you fulfill the mitzvah of higadat ala bincha? So the Haggadah, simply in itself, says doesn't really give a specific minimal amount, because it says, anyone who expounds upon the story of Egypt is to be praiseworthy. Seeming that there's no minimum, there's no maximal amount. Definitely, you can keep going, until the cows come home. In the background, but as far as what is the minimal amount, so the Torah itself does not give a minimal amount. So the Gemara goes into descriptions of exactly, what are the minimal amounts. It gives a few like broad outlying features of achilim begnut mesayim b'shevach, which means you should start in the lowly when the Israelites were at their lowest and end on their highest. So there's a debate in the Gemara, what does the lowest mean? Is the lowest that Avadim Ayunu Leparu Mitzrayim, that we were slaves in Egypt and we came to free? Or is the lowest actually, it's got nothing to do with Egypt, but has much more to do with that our forefathers were idol worshippers. And then now Hashem has brought us close to his worship. So that's minimal. We say we've got to have the 4 questions, the son's got to ask, we've got to expound upon the story of Arami or Veid Avi, of the very shortest description of the whole Egypt saga, which comes somewhere in Deuteronomy, has actually got to do with the bringing of the first fruits. We'd bring our fruits to Jerusalem, and would say, and Aramean sought to destroy our father, and he went unto Egypt to sojourn in small in number, and there they grew and became mighty and prosperous. The Egyptians ill-treated us and laid heavy bondage upon us, and we expound that whole part until we leave Egypt. So those are the sort of broad outlines of what the Haggadah, and it sort of makes sense. And also Pesach Matzah Maro, Rabban Gamliel says you have to say Pesach Matzah Maro. Why do we eat these 3 things? So that is how the Talmud sort of gives us. That is what the Haggadah is. That it's starting with low, ending in high. You've got to have question answer format. You've got to tell the base story of the. We went down, we were enslaved, we prayed to Hashem, and He did miracles and took us out. And mention the Pesach Matzah Maro. But when you actually open up the Haggadah, there's a lot more in there. And there are a whole bunch of things which, like that Haggadah would be reasonably Seder, where that's all we had to do. But no, we had this whole Seder, Kadesh, Uchaz, Kapas, Yachatz, etc., etc. And we go through this whole process of lots of different stages along the way, which each and every one of them has deep meaning. But once we get into the actual hagaddah part of the Seder, there's the Magid, there seem to be a lot of things there which either best case scenario are interesting but not seemingly relevant, worst case scenario completely irrelevant and completely skipped over. So, for example, the rabbis in Bnei Brak, what on earth are the rabbis doing in Bnei Brak? The four sons, very interesting, but Dayenu, also very interesting, Hishamda, also like lots of different parts of the Haggadah, which you got to ask the question is, when the rabbis of the Gemara, the Talmud, got together and said, all right, gentlemen, let's create a base book that will become like the Siddur, a focal point that all Jews around the world, when it comes to the first night of Pesach, night of Pesach, they will find a way to be able to follow it, and not only for the mitzvah, but to get all the deep themes that we would like to instill within the Israelites. So they came up with this Haggadah, which is almost completely universal. There may be a few songs at the end that are different, but across the world, there's not, to the best of my knowledge, different versions of the Haggadah. It is pretty much stock standard through Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, Hasidim, Litvish. We all keep the same Haggadah. So what is behind it? What was the intent of the rabbis in putting all this extra material, this extra stuff in the Haggadah? So the thesis that I'd like to present with you, and I'm going to give you the thesis from the outset, and then show you a number of proofs for the thesis, and that is that the goal of the Haggadah was on the mitzvah of telling the story is to remember what happened when we left Egypt. But the night of the Seder was an opportunity to instill faith within a people who felt completely abandoned. And that is what the goal of the Haggadah is. That is, yes, we tell the story of Egypt, but how do you give hope to a people who feel neglected, who feel absolutely abandoned? And so through the Haggadah is going to weave a lot of different narratives and a lot of different stories that each of them come and add, perhaps in sometimes explicitly, but in other times far more implicitly, the idea that just hold on, things are going to get better. Now, as a privileged Jew living in a privileged generation, and I think I'd say this for all listeners and virtually everyone in the world today, is that for us, the question of the Seder has never been one of how can we feel free when we're still slaves. Ours is much more, how can we ever feel like slaves when we only know freedom? Yeah. So, for example, when you start at the beginning of the Haggadah, we say, this is the bread of affliction, our forefathers are out in the land of Egypt, everyone come and take part. Now we are slaves, next year we'll be free men, now we're here, next year in the land of Israel. So what do you mean, now we are slaves, next year we'll be free men? So how do you understand that? So you look around the table and you're not slaves. And post-Second World War, have we ever been slaves? Maybe the Jews behind the Iron Curtain, but definitely in the last 50 years, last 30 years, 20 years, that this idea of being slaves is something completely foreign to us. So what does it mean we are slaves and we'll be free? Because you've got to look at the timing. Like when has all this been written? The temple's been destroyed. The Israelites have been sent into diaspora. We are wandering around the four corners of the earth. And we are a hated and oppressed mass, small minority, wherever we go. And the whole idea that somehow we are going to, celebrate the celebration of our freedom really begs the question. It's like, how do you celebrate freedom when you're in captivity? When, Pesach often falls, Pesach falls on the night of Easter. Easter always falls on Pesach because date of Easter is based on the date of Pesach. So while the Christians are mourning the death of their God, we are held as responsible, at least for a significant period of Jewish history, we were held as responsible. And angry Christians were marauding through the Jewish shtetls, and pogrom after pogrom after pogrom. And it was the most volatile and fragile time within Jewish life and the Jewish year. Easter was Pesach. And we're celebrating, now we are free men. Fine. In Egypt, when we sat there and we had our belts tied and our staves in our hand and we said, let's we celebrate to live in Egypt. But that was 3,000 years ago. Since then, it's just been nothing but sorrows. And so the idea of trying to feel free at a time where we look outside and it's still slavery is very, very difficult. Now, for us, up until this year, this idea of freedom is something that we've all taken for granted. Every year it was, of course, we're free, but let's pretend we're slaves and then try to imagine what it's like to be free, which is something that's incredibly difficult. This year, for 1 year, it's going to feel like we can't go out, like the Jews in Egypt, as the angel of death came over their doorways, and you were not allowed to leave the house lest you be afflicted. It's the first you were actually going to feel that you're going to be inside in quarantine. You should have blood on our doorposts, that the mashchit, that the angel of death shouldn't afflict us. So that's the atmosphere that the Haggadah is being written. It's been written in a time of Jewish despair, not a time of Jewish triumph. So here, people coming to shul 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, when the Haggadah is, taking shape and form, and they're coming, hunched over and depressed. It's like, how do you celebrate freedom? How do we celebrate joy? And the rabbis say, well, we have to. This is the Zman Cherutenu. This is the time of our freedom. So they put it into the Haggadah. So that's the thesis. It is a book of hope. So the most telling part of this, and I'd like to share with you're going through the Haggadah, start off with our stories of Avadim Ayinu. Paro says, anyone who elaborates on the story of leaving Egypt, behold, he is praiseworthy. Then it goes into an interesting story which seemingly is completely unconnected. Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar, Ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tar from Shehu Masubim B'nai Brak. 5 rabbis were standing in B'nai Brak. And they were telling the story of leaving Egypt that entire night. It's time to say Shema. Okay, so why is this there? So superficial reading would suggest that we've just said that anyone who elaborates on the telling of the story of leaving Egypt is to be praiseworthy. And these guys, these rabbis, even though they were incredibly wise and knowledgeable, they still spent the entire night telling the story of leaving Egypt. And that's why it comes here. So there's a fascinating insight brought down by the Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein, wrote a book with the Aruch HaShulchan. And he said as follows: these 5 rabbis were not just 5 rabbis who happened to be dining together. These were 5 leaders in different towns. And each of them lived in a different part of Eretz Yisrael. And there's a tradition brought down in the Talmud that you can never leave your family during the Chagim. You need to be by your families. So why on earth do we have 5 rabbis all coming together in Bnei Brak? So he explains, well, who lived in Bnei Brak? He said it was Rabbi Akiva. That's who's in Bnei Brak. So I'm just going to quote the Talmudic statement as it comes out. There's a famous story with Rabbi Akiva. It says, this is how the Torah is a Gemara in Masechet Makot. It says as follows: there were these rabbis, most of them the same rabbis as we have here. They were going along the way. They heard the rejoicing and the celebrations of the Romans. And everybody started crying. All the rabbis started crying. But Rabbi Akiva was laughing. They said to him, he says, how can you laugh? He says, why are you guys crying? Says these guys who worship grass and stone, and they offer incense to all different kinds of idols, and they're sitting there in confidence and in quiet and tranquility. Our temple has been destroyed. How can we not cry? So it says Rabbi Akiva, that's exactly why I'm laughing. So if those who transgress the will of Hashem, this is how tranquil they live, imagine what Hashem has in store for the rest of us. That's story 1. That story is less known. The second story is much more familiar. And there was another time that they were all going up to Jerusalem. They all got up to Mount Scopus and they tore their garments. And when they looked over and saw the Temple Mount, they saw a fox that was running out of the holiest of holies. They all started crying. Rabbi Akiva started laughing. They said to him, how can you laugh at a time like this? He says, why are you crying? He says, the place of the temple, it says, anyone other than the Kohen Gadol enter will be put to death. And now there are foxes running in and out. How can we not cry? So he said back to him, it's for that exact reason that I'm laughing. And he quotes two prophecies. He quotes two prophets that are juxtaposed next to one another. Uriah the prophet prophesies in the first temple and Zachariah in the second one. And he explains as follows. It says, in the first prophecy it says, this is the first prophecy came and said that Zion will be plowed over like a plowed field. And in Zechariah it said, Od yishvu zekenim v'zekenot b'rechovot Yerushalayim. This is another prophecy that says one day the elderly men and women will sit in the streets of Jerusalem. And the pasuk continues, they'll be sitting, seeing the laughter of children and the rejoicing of the brides and the groom. Until the first prophecy of Jerusalem being plowed over came true, I was never confident that the restoration of Jerusalem and the elderly sitting in tranquility and watching the children play would become true either. But now that I've seen that Jerusalem has indeed gone completely to ruin, I'm confident in the fact that the second prophecy will come true. And they said, Amru lo, Akiva nichamtanu, Akiva nichamtanu. Akiva, you have comforted us. In fact, if you go to Jerusalem today in the old city, there's a children's playground that is juxtaposed immediately after what is left of the ruins of the walls of the first temple period. And this verse, this Talmudic statement is over there. It is, we are living through this prophecy. So it says that the Rabbi Epstein says that the rabbis got together. They said, how do we celebrate Pesach? You know, once upon a time, Pesach was this joyous time. We would go to Jerusalem. We would celebrate our freedom. We would offer up a korban Pesach, a Passover offering, and it would really be a time of rejoicing. And now there's no temple. There's no offering. We are slaves to the Romans, and we are second-class citizens to all. How can we ever appreciate it? How can we ever find meaning in Pesach? So they come with a solid answer. You go to Rabbi Akiva in Bnei Brak. Because Rabbi Akiva is going to instill within us faith. He will convince us that despite the darkness, there is still light. And that's why the story is inserted into the Haggadah. To give hope that no matter how dark things look outside, there's still hope. And so we all go to Rabbi Akiva in Bnei Brak. So that's my first proof of this thesis. The second proof of the thesis actually continues with the next part of the story, which is what they actually talk about in Bnei Brak. It says, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, I'm like 70 years of old, and I've never merited to talk about the leaving of Egypt at night time until the story came and said, until the Ben Zoma came and said, remember the days of your life, all the days of your life, the days of your life, the days, all the days of your life include the night. And the Chachamim say, the days of your life of this world, all the days of your life to come include the Mot HaMashiach. Now, this argument that is happening over here has nothing to do with not of Seder. It's actually got to do we say the third paragraph of the Shema or not? Do we say that we have to remember leaving Egypt in the daytime, or do we only say it at night time? So the way that this dispute is understood is when it says, do we say remembering Egypt at night time or only during the daytime? What's the logic behind that argument? So within rabbinic and Torah metaphorology, metaphor, the idea of day and night can mean light and dark, but like it is so often in literature, It means good and bad. It means good and evil. It means good times and bad times. So when it comes and says, Rav Lazman Azariah says, I've always understood that one should remember leaving Egypt during the daytime. Why? Because when it's light, when life is good, we are celebrating our freedom. So to remember when our freedom started, that's our Independence Day. That's what leaving Egypt is. It is the Jewish Independence Day. And at night time, when it's dark, so how does one ever remember that? And that's when Minzoma comes and says, even in the times of darkness, we've got to remember. And then the Chachamim say, because even in Mota Mashiach, we throw the Messiah into this in the Seder, it says that things will get better. This is not the end. Things will improve. Okay, that is my second proof. The third proof comes a little bit later when it talks about immediately after we say Baruch Shomer Haftachtahu, blessed be the omnipresent, blessed be He. We go and it says Gama Goya Sheyavdu. So it tells the story of Abraham, and Hashem promised Abraham that his descendants would go down to Egypt for 400 years and be slaves, and then they'd come out and I would judge them. And then it goes into Vihisha Amda. So Vihisha Amda, which is, and it is, this is stood by for our fathers and us, for not just one alone has risen up against us to destroy us, but in every generation they rise up against us to destroy us, and the Holy One, blessed be He, saves us from our hand. What on earth is this doing there? If this is a story about Egypt, so Egypt was the first. It was the first time that we were oppressed and the first time we got out. Why are we talking about in every generation? Is because the people who need resilience, the people who need hope are the ones who say, it doesn't look like it's coming. This is stood by, we are sitting here in the depths of despair. And we'll say, so yes, there were Egyptians, but we beat them. There were Persians, we beat them. There were Romans, the Greeks, then there were Romans. And there were Spaniards and Crusaders and Inquisitions and Nazis and the like, and we triumphed over them all. And it is there because you do not give up hope. The Leila Seder is to remember not only that which happened, but that which will happen. It will get better again. Okay, that is my third proof. My fourth proof is the blessing that we say on the hagaddah. So right at the end, this is the blessing we say immediately before having the meal. And it says, so we've just said the first two verses of Hallel, and then it says, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, God. Asher gal lanu v'gal rabotenu mitzrayim, that you redeemed us and our forefathers from Egypt. That seems quite fine now. And it brought us to this evening to eat matzah maror. Now it switches. So too Hashem, God of our forefathers. Let us come to celebrate many festivals in the future in peace. May we rejoice in the rebuilding of your temple, in the rebuilding of your city, and be joyous in your divine service. That the temple should go back into operation, and we will be able to benefit from all the sacrifices, from the Pesach, that we are able to sprinkle the blood on the altar for your will. And then we will sing to you a song, a new song, on our redemption and of redeeming our souls. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, Shem, the Redeemer of Israel. So what's this happening here? It's not a prayer that we are saying about what happened. It is a prayer saying, thanks for the past, but there's a second component. We are waiting for more to happen. Do not think that the Leila Seder is there just to remember the past. It is there as a prayer for the future. In fact, this comes in other areas. There's a fascinating discussion of the Bracha Shechianu. So the different versions of Shechianu. So we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, Hashem, Shechianu, sorry, not Shechianu, the blessing of Shasanisim. The blessing, so we don't say this on Pesach, and we don't, but we do say it on Chanukah and Purim. The bracha is Shasanisim la'avotenu, who did miracles for our forefathers, Bayami Mahem, in those days. And then what? So usually it says Bazman hazeh, which means at this time. So in Kislev for Chanukah, and in Adar for Purim. There's another version of the that did miracles for us back then, and so too should do miracles for us again now. So that idea that happens over there is also happens over here. But I just want to share with you the actual Talmudic argument, because this last blessing of the Hagaddah is not entirely agreed on. So I just want to share with you. So the blessing goes, so we conclude the blessing at the end of the Hagaddah about saying Gaal Yisrael, Redeemer of Israel. Rabbi Tarfon Omer. So Rabbi Tarfon says, how do we finish it? Asher Ga'alanu v'Ga'al Avotenu miMitzrayim. Says that's how we do it. We do it, then we say, thank you, God, for taking us and our forefathers out of Egypt. And then there's a second. So there's another opinion. It comes and says, no, you've got to say, please bring us to more festivals and bring us to rebuild your temple and the like. So who's that second opinion? It's Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, who is the eternal optimist, is once again in the Hagaddah. This whole idea of that we need to find a way to have hope at a time where we're feeling quite hopeless and quite downtrodden. So there's my fourth proof. And finally, the fifth proof, which I think if I were to unmute you all and to guess, is what part of the Seder makes absolutely no sense if it is purely of leaving Egypt? So I'll unmute you for a second. Let's see. A second. Can someone shout it out?
I think I also don't have it on the high Seder.
Anyone? All right. So I will leave it at that. Elijah. What on earth is Elijah doing at the Seder? So you can think whatever vort you want about Elijah, but Elijah is throughout Jewish literature the individual who comes to represent redemption. They represent the Messianic era. So why on earth does Elijah come in Leila Seder? Is because we are hoping that Mashiach is around the corner. We are hoping that the times will return and the times will get better. That we will be all, rejoicing and returning to Eretz Yisrael to be able to be there. And so throughout the Seder, you see that there are two things that are in many ways completely different, but happening at the same time. On the one hand, we're remembering Egypt. We're remembering that Egypt was a rough time in our history, but it was a pinnacle. It was a turning point in Jewish history that we went from a family to a nation and acquired our independence. But then, how do we as a nation that are now going through a deep and dark diaspora continue to remember the fact that even though things might seem quite challenging now, things will get better? And that's where Rabbi Akiva in particular features throughout the Hagaddah, but the general theme of the Hagaddah is one of trying to instill hope. So every year that I think about this idea, I'm usually trying to, you try to take members of the Seder and say, let's go back into the mindset of when the Hagaddah was written and feel how despondent the people felt. And now read the Hagaddah as a way of lifting you up. But my sense is that this year, I don't need to do that. That this year, the fragility within the community at large is one that needs a certain level of confidence. The idea that once again, we feel that we are not free. The fear is a different kind of fear, and the enemy is a different kind of enemy. But the idea that good times will return and that Hashem, rules over all, and that the hashgacha, the divine providence, will ultimately bring us back into better times, is something that we need to consistently keep in the forefront of our mind. So as we're sitting in our Seders this year, and I think for all of us, it would be fair to say it's going to be the smallest Seders we've ever had. It'll be Seders of 2, 3, 4, 1. And that is the great challenge that happens, during these periods of time. And understand that we are never truly alone. That Hashem, as he was in Mitzrayim, is with us every step of the way. And that idea that these days, weeks, to be able to put things into perspective, that this is one Pesach, please God, in many Pesachim. And many times you will be able to, please God, go back to Yerushalayim and do it k'mo shetzarich, as we are supposed to. But even if we don't merit that just yet, the idea that next year, please God, our Seder's will be full again. And so to be able to carry the message of the Haggadah, that it is giving us hope as it has given hope to so many before us, and that this Seder should be as meaningful and is inspirational, albeit slightly different to every other Seder that we've had in our lives. So I wish you all a very premature Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Please join in to all the other great shirim that will, please God, be happening over the next few days, and no doubt will carry on over the next few weeks. I wish you all a pleasant evening and a good week. Thank you very much. You are now all unmuted.